All right, the Celtics Celebrity Series continues today with Boston Mayor Marty Walsh. Mayor, thanks a lot for joining us today. We really appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited about this.
Absolutely. And I just want to start out, and obviously we're all going through a very interesting time right now. I'm curious, where does Boston stand right now in its fight against the coronavirus?
We have about 10,000 cases we're gonna pass the 10,000 case mark today. We have 400 and as of today, 426 people have lost their life due to coronavirus. I think if you're in a basketball game, I guess equate it that way. I'd say I think for the whole fight here, we're probably almost at halftime. I think now the second half's going to look different than the first half. We still have a lot of work to do. We're not ready to reopen, in my opinion, right now. I think the cities that have done it across the United States of America are going to be. Hopefully they're not, but hopefully they're going to regret their move of reopening. We still have a lot of work to do as far as prevention and making sure that people social physical distance. And then we still have a long way to go before we get the amount of testing done that we need to really get a true gauge of where we are. We've had about 28,000 people of 700,000 tested for the coronavirus. So that's such a small sampling. You really can't get a gauge on what does that mean for Boston.
When you say that the second half is going to look a lot different than the first half, what do you mean? Why will it look differently?
Because I think we are going to have to eventually start opening up and businesses and things like that. People are going to have to go back to work in some shape or form. But the coronavirus is still very much going to be front of mind for a lot of people. People are still going to be getting the coronavirus. People are still going to be passing away from the coronavirus, and the fear is still going to be there. So as we think about how do we kind of reopen society in a phased approach, it could take several months, maybe even a little longer before we get to anywhere near, resemblance of where we were, say, February 2nd. I think that when the coronavirus was kind of in another country and we had one case here in Boston, it changed pretty drastically after March, early March. I think it was March 6th, we had 5 cases. And then right after that, we started shutting things down. So from March, say, 5th to 6th through today, 10,000 cases almost of coronavirus.
Wow. Yeah, and obviously it's shut down the society and everyone. One of the things that's included in that is all sporting events. And as you know, and as I know, and everyone in the city knows, this is the greatest sports city in the world. How badly do you think that the city and the people here want and need their sports back? And both the Celtics and the Bruins, and then the Red Sox were supposed to be starting up as well.
Oh God, I think everyone's dying. I was talking to my cousin's husband in Ireland yesterday, and he was watching 92 soccer matches from 1992, and I was watching Larry Bird play the other night. You know what I mean? And Kevin McHale in his rookie season, and and then watching the Bruins. I watched the Red Sox game, the Yankees game where Robert stole second, and that's the '04 series. And so we're watching all this. It's fun to watch, but I think sports is a really big part of our city. It's a great distraction too. Certainly the Celtics use the Celtics. I mean, their team is incredible, and they were going to make I think a deep run into the playoffs this year. See what happens. I mean, they have great young talent, and they're very civic orientated. The team. I mean, the players are very engaged in the community as well. Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown, and they're all very engaged in the community. Jayson Tatum and all the other, and Cantor and all of them. I mean, they're very active. So not having them part of our community, either in our schools and stuff, that's a big loss as well. The Celtics do a lot with Boston Center for Youth and Families. They're part of our programming with our different facilities, and oftentimes the Celtics either sponsor or they're there. And same with the Bruins. The Bruins are a big miss too. Bruins are first place in the league. Certainly, they're going to make a deep run in the playoffs as well. And the Red Sox still have a good gut of a team. People said, oh, they lost a lot of players. They still have a good team. I mean, we love our sports in Boston. So not having our sports, I think, at least for me personally, I miss it. There's nothing to watch on TV. I love watching the past, but I know how it turned out.
I do want to ask you a question about that though, because you mentioned Bird, you mentioned McHale, and a lot of these rebroadcasts are happening. When you think of those guys, because that was right in your heyday, right around 20 years old when those guys were really winning championships and playing at a high level, what do you think of when you think of those guys?
Oh my God! I was a kid. I was in high school when I remember the parade down Boylston Street. That was the first championship parade I went to in '81, I think it was. And I remember them on Boylston Street with Bird. They had the painted hats on, the Celtics painted hats kind of thing, and Danny Ainge, it was unbelievable. I mean, I think back to being younger. I think back to a time where for basketball, for me then, every Sunday, there used to be, it still is, but every Sunday is like a 12 o'clock game. And it was like the Celtics Lakers, the Celtics Sixers, the Celtics Pistons, as the Pistons got better. And it was that just seemed to me like it was always like it's such a big day. And then Dorchester Day is the first Saturday in June, Sunday in June, and there was always a Celtics game that day. And it was just like, you watch these lineups like Dr. J and Larry Bird fighting, or the Lakers with Kareem and Robert Parrish going at it. It was amazing basketball. And I think back when I think of that team, I think of being a kid. And then when I think of the teams today, obviously I'm an adult and a little older, and I appreciate it, but not when you're a kid. You really appreciate sports, like you live for it. And it was either the Celtics or the Bruins for me back then. The Bruins same time frame. A decade later, they were in the cup a couple times. They didn't win it, but they were in the cup a couple times.
And a lot of that was happening at the old Garden. Now we've got the new Garden. I'm just curious how often you're able to get there and really enjoy the playoff environment that we all get to experience during these runs.
Amy Latimer, I'm sorry what I'm about to say, but I missed the old Garden. I had season tickets for the Bruins, and I got them in 1987. We were in the stadium, center ice, section 211, I believe it was. Couldn't see the clock above, but you could see the corners, and it was horrible. Like, it was just there's a dingy place to kind of be, but it was an unbelievable place to watch a game.
That's character, right?
Oh, it was so much character. And I still think of that. I have a picture of my house of ripping down the Garden with the opening, and like all I think about is like thinking the memories of in that place. Whether it was, I was at the game the night Ray Bork, Esposito's number got retired. I was at that game and seeing that, and I was at the Larry Bird game. He was playing, I think it was Atlanta, and he was going to score his 20,000 point. And I was sitting. I didn't really get the chance to go to many games back then. I didn't have connections for tickets. And Birds has 11 points or something in the game, and condensation came through the floor, and they had to cancel the game. He was like 9 points away from 20,000, but the ice had come through, and I'm like, that doesn't happen at the new guy. But I miss the old guy.
Did you get to the next game to see him score the next 9
No,
points?
I didn't. No, that was it. I think in that heyday, tickets were really hard to get. I mean,
yeah,
certainly, little get them now, but it was hard. But it was fun watching the Celtics then, and that's what this team that the Celtics have now. Actually, for the last 4 years, minus maybe a little bit last year, this team is fun to watch. I mean, I just love. They're not out of any game. They're young. They're spirited. I don't know if they have egos or not, but their egos certainly don't come out on the court. They're a team, and the coach does an amazing job, and it's fun to watch that.
And that's one thing. Some of the guys have talked to me during this pandemic that they think that when they get back, if and when they get back, that's going to carry over, and it's going to really help them reintegrate quicker when the season comes back into session, because they do have that chemistry.
And they're young. I mean, they can run any team into the ground. So, I think it's pretty awesome. No, but they are fun to watch, and I love the fact that they're so civic minded. From the ownership, Steve and Steve's done an amazing job there. Wicker's done an amazing job, and the team at the top for the Celtics wise. Actually, all the ownership in Boston is great. They do their own things in their own ways. It's just amazing.
I want to move back a little bit and get a little bit more information from you and your insight on the process of this pandemic going through the city of Boston and the country. What in your mind has been the greatest challenge that you have faced during this process?
Right now, the challenge is trying to just explain to people how important it is that you do the physical social distancing. I think that is key, because we can literally stop the virus if we all just, kind of self-isolated. And if we did it for 2 weeks and did it disciplined, we can actually literally almost stop the virus in its tracks. And then when you watch TV, you see like a nice day, like over the last weekend was. We have a couple nice days and people walking around without masks on, kind of hanging out. That just spreads the virus. I mean, so we're never going to get to the other side. So I think that's kind of one thing I'd kind of like to see better. And then I think we need a better unifying national message. Right now, the way it's working is as states continue to add on different things, it's not a uniting message. And I think that the one thing I think that professional sports have gotten right is pretty much canceling all at the same time, following each other's lead, working with each other, coming up with looking at strict protocol. How do you return back? And that's what we have to do. And I think that our leagues, NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, and the football hasn't had to make a real decision other than the draft. And I'm glad they went forward with the draft. because people needed a distraction. But I think that we can learn a little bit from Major League Sports on how they're handling this as far as the thought process going into reopening.
And you touched on the weather getting better in this area of the country. And I know it was great here last weekend. I know I was eager to get outside and get a little sun. It's a little later arriving this year than it has been in the past. But what worries or concerns do you have about that? And people kind of just saying, hey, I've been caged up for 2 months. I need to get outside. How can you guys slow that down?
Well, I don't know if you can slow it down. I think
Yeah.
people have to realize the importance of the physical social distancing. You asked me a question a minute ago. What worries me? What's also on the top of mind is that when I think about reopening, if we do it too quickly without a plan, the second surge could be worse. And that I don't think our economy. I don't. Let me put it this way: I don't want our economy to have to take that second blow like that, because I'm not sure what the results will be. And I think that, honestly, it's within our own control right now to do everything we can to slow the spread down. We're seeing, hospitalization as of today. Hospitalization is pretty consistent in Boston. There are more non-COVID patients than COVID patients, which is a good thing. There is some capacity in our emergency room, which is a good thing for folks that are sick, and if they don't feel well, and if you're watching this and you don't feel well, you have pains in your chest, shortness of breath, you should call. It might not be coronavirus. Might not be coronavirus related, but certainly you should call 911. So seeing that makes me feel good. And then, yesterday we had 135 new cases of coronavirus. It was the lowest in probably 14 days.
That's
But when the
great.
numbers come out today, that number could go back to 300-400.
Yeah.
So you really have to look at a 14-day decline in positive cases, a 14-day decline in deaths, and also monitor the emergency rooms to make sure that those are down. So when you get those, now you can start really thinking about how do we bring society back.
And talking about bringing society back, there are areas of the country, you mentioned this already, that are doing that. Some cities, some states are reopening. I'm curious, what are you looking to learn from those places in the process that they are using to reopen?
Well, I think what's going to happen in those places, and they've been open for a couple of days now, I think what they're going to find is people aren't coming back. And I think businesses are going to be like, okay, well, how come people aren't coming back? So I think that in order to open up, for example, you use the Celtics game for example. But let's say we open up the Celtics game tomorrow and fans can all come back. And the Celtics open up, they have their first game, and 3 players are giving the teams a hard time they don't want to play. And, 1,000 fans out of 18,000 show up. Well, clearly the work wasn't done. But if you lay down the foundation where people feel it's safe to come back into an arena, whether it's physical distancing, however they would do that, or eventually we go back to the way we were, people will feel confident that they are not going to come in contact with the coronavirus. So I do think it comes down to people need to feel safe, and people need to know they're going to be safe. And I don't think that those states are going to experience these big crowds yet. Now, going to the beach is one thing. People think they're outside, the fresh air. Somebody gets sick or sneezes, it's not going to impact them. It could impact them, but the chances of that happening and being in an 18,000 arena are a little different. But we still, I think people are going to want to feel safe before they start going into stores and restaurants and things like that.
Yeah, and I know that was just an example, people going to a Celtics game, but what conversations have you had with the Celtics, the Bruins, the Red Sox about the potential of fans being at games at some point before we hit 2021?
Yeah, I've had conversations with almost everybody at high level, and I said to them, I'd be interested to see what the leagues are thinking about, what the leagues would want to see in cities, and I think that's something that we should incorporate into our plans and policies for reopening. Me personally, I'd love to see the Celtics and Bruins and Red Sox come back and play this year and finish the season out, even if it's without fans. Now that brings a whole group of new challenges to the teams themselves, as far as needing the fans and needing the revenue to play the players and things like that. So, but I certainly would work with them on whatever we have to do. I mean, it's again, as a sports fan, I'm selfish here. Celtics are 2 games out of second place in the East, I think, right now.
Yeah.
And the Bruins are in first place in the NHL. Of course, why wouldn't I want to see basketball come back? Because I honestly think the Celtics have an opportunity to run potentially to at least the Eastern Conference Finals, if not the Finals. And the Bruins have a chance to go all the way to the Cup as well. So I selfishly want to see it come back. But first and foremost, the safety of people, most importantly, including the players. We want to make sure they're safe. I mean, I don't know if anyone in the NHL came came down with coronavirus. But NBA, I think there was half a dozen players, including Marcus
Yeah.
Smart, that had COVID. So I mean,
And that was just what was reported. We don't
yeah.
even know what the full number was.
And
So
you just look at that case there, how contagious this disease is. I think it was a player for the Utah Jazz that played the Celtics. I'm not sure if that's how Marcus Smart might
mhm.
have done it. And then I think, played Detroit the next night, a couple other players in Detroit. So you could literally follow that team, the pattern in that team, and you can literally watch the case of COVID follow that team.
Yeah.
That's how contagious and how dangerous this potentially is.
Yeah. And the testing process has been so crazy, since the start. You started out with one test. Obviously, we've advanced a little bit. And you talked about the need to test more people and more of the population in Boston in the future. What plans are being made right now to be able to execute that and ramp up testing in the coming weeks and months?
Yeah, we've actually expanded, starting either today or tomorrow. We're going to have 19 testing sites open up in the city. So we started with the 5 hospitals, then we had a couple health centers, and then we've slowly, gradually increased that, where we have 14 health centers that are offering the test, or will be offering the test this week, and then 5 hospitals that have it. And then our goal is to look at these other community health centers around the city where they can all offer tests for their residents in their neighborhoods. And then it's the access to tests. So the test today, back 3 weeks ago, this thing's a very fluid situation. 3 weeks ago, the test was you get the COVID test, the swab, and now you really want to make sure you get the swab and the antibody. So that if you test negative for the COVID-19 and the antibody tells you positive, well, then that, for us in the city, that gives us a data point to see how many people have contracted the virus, and that will help us figuring out how do we reopen things. And let's go back to the Celtics. If we can say 50-60% of Boston people had COVID-19, then that's going to change the mindset behind opening potentially a venue for people, because now so there's a lot of thought processes that has to go into this.
When you look at the testing and when you look at reopening and all this stuff, how is Boston unique compared to some of the other cities in the country? And maybe how does that make you look at things differently and more thoroughly before you make these decisions?
It's a great question. I think we're unique because of our hospitals. I think we're unique because of our doctors. We're unique because of our medical professionals. They're amazing. We have a lot of, between institutions in our city, all the colleges and institutions and the labs and the scientists are here, really at the forefront in a lot of ways, the talent that's here in Boston. And I'm going to throw Cambridge into that conversation as well, Boston and Cambridge, between Harvard, MIT, BU, BC, Northeastern, all those different schools. I mean, there's really an opportunity here for us to kind of be at the forefront. If you watch the national news, whether it's CNN or one of those, when they bring experts on, a lot of those experts got trained here in Boston. So I think it gives us a little bit of an edge. And quite honestly, Steve Pagliuca is working on a document to reopen society. It's probably one of the most thoughtful, thorough documents out there. And Steve is obviously a philanthropist in the city of Boston and Massachusetts, and he's part owner of the Celtics. I mean, this is a homegrown person who's helping us potentially reopen the whole country.
Well, now I'm going to have to get him on next week.
Yeah, you should. I mean, he has an interesting perspective on this. You should, because he's doing a lot of things. He's thinking. I mean, think about this. He's a resident of Massachusetts. He is a business owner of a business. He's a business person with an investment side. So he has a unique perspective on all these different things.
I want to follow up. Last week, I think, or at least a few days ago, you appeared on Fox 25, and you said that when the city does reopen and you make this decision, you need to make the right moves. What are some of those right moves that need to be made?
We need data to back up the decisions we make, so that, as I said a little earlier, that we're not in a situation September, October, where we're shutting everything down again. I think we have to, as we reopen businesses and reopen City Hall and other places like that, those businesses and organizations and retailers can withstand another increase in coronavirus by staying open the second time. And I'm not quite sure today how to get there. What I've learned in this kind of coronavirus battle from March 6th through today, it's about 8 weeks. No day is the same and no week is the same, and the challenges in front of you are different. And when you're dealing with a virus that's a worldwide pandemic, it's very unpredictable, and you can't predict what's going to happen. So it literally takes turns that you have to almost try and anticipate. And when you don't anticipate the turn, it takes a turn. You have to get on top of it quickly to kind of fix the solution. That's the best I can give you on it. I mean, because it literally changes. If I was on this, if we did this interview for 8 weeks in a row, the messaging would be probably different all 8 weeks, just because of the virus is different as we move forward.
As everyone is learning when they see the press conferences, from the White House. I mean, everything changes every day.
That's a different thing.
Yeah, that is different. But we do hear that the messages change every day, the information changes every day. So I'm curious, when you look back on this entire process, when we're done and we've moved past this, and 20 years from now, someone asks you, what was that like to be the mayor of Boston during that pandemic? How will you explain it?
I can't answer it yet because I don't know how it ends. I know we're going to get through it because we're strong, we're resilient, we're Boston strong, and we're strong people here in Boston. But I'm not sure what the impacts are yet. We don't know yet. I think that I am proud of Bostonians for what they've been able to do this far with the physical social distancing, with staying connected to people. Up until today, we've served 725,000 meals to our kids and adults in Boston. We've providing meals to our seniors. We've given out 30,000 Chromebooks. Our first responders, police, fire, and EMS have been out on the front lines for us. Our trash people are sanitary, picking trash up. Public works are cleaning streets. Our bus drivers are driving the school buses, delivering food now. Teachers are teaching online. There's so much going on. I shouldn't have started mentioning names, but they know who they are, public employees. So it's too hard to say what it's going to be. But I think 20 years from now, we will look back on this saying, wow, that was, I think it'll be the same thing that people that experienced the Spanish flu in 1917 and 1918, 20 years later, they never forgot and they were always prepared for it. And I think that it's kind of one of those things we got to pass down to the generations so that the next generation or whatever group of people have to deal with something like this, that we have a roadmap for them.
And you relayed a long list of great initiatives that have happened in this city, and the city's really responding well. And this isn't the first time that Boston has faced a crisis. It's certainly not going to be the last. But what makes this city unique in the way that it approaches and handles situations like this?
I just think it's who we are. I mean, we have a guy. We're a teamwork. Let's call them a Crystal Group. General McChrystal's brought some folks in to helping us coordinate kind of responses and how we move forward. And last Friday, the team leader, we took him on a ride around Boston, and I was showing him different areas and different neighborhoods. And as I was going around the city, I was just thinking to myself, the gratitude that I have. What makes us strong is that we're unique individual neighborhoods that have our own identity. But in times like this, we come together as one person, one Boston. And that's what makes us strong. It's like we can unique neighborhoods that give us a little bit of fighting spirit. And then when we come together, that's who we are as Bostonians. And everyone says that they feel it in our city, the spirit in our city. And I think, when the marathon bombing happened in 2013, I wasn't the mayor then, I was running for mayor, watching the city just rally around the survivors and the families who lost their loved ones that day. And then, as the year went on, 1 year later, watching those same survivors that Boston rallied around, they rallied around Boston to kind of say it's okay to celebrate and it's okay to lift us up. And so Boston's a unique place. I'm very proud to be a Bostonian. I'm very proud to come from here, and I'm proud of being the mayor and working with people every day and just seeing people do amazing things every day.
Well, as proud as you are of being in Boston and all the people in the city, we're proud to have you as our leader. And thank you for leading us in the right direction throughout all of this. We really appreciate everything you're doing for the city, and hopefully we get back to basketball and some sports soon.
Yeah, we need to get back soon because as mayor in my first 7 years, I've had a pretty good run. We've had a World Series. I've had 3 Super Bowls. And what I need now is the 18th banner to go up on the rafters, and I need Bruins to hoist the Stanley Cup. So, I'm forced to run for re-election now because the COVID has canceled the season. So now I have to get those next few years in. So I think the Celtics team is going to be amazing. So I want to thank the Celtics for doing this. Thank you for hosting this. This is a good conversation, and thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Take care.